Do you care if the wine in your glass is cloudy? I only had a small handful of cherries left in my freezer, so I added some chopped apples to the pan. I threw in some rhubarb sticks for sharpness and flavour, and then added some plums for sweetness and colour. Next I poured over some hot water and simmered for a while to kill off any wild yeast or bacteria. After about 20 minutes, I used a sanitised potato masher to get all that lovely juice out. Using hot water that I'd put through a water filter, I added 1.1 kilograms of white granulated sugar in the saucepan and stirred it until it was dissolved. Then I poured it along with my fruit juice mix into a demijohn. I added 2 cartons of apple juice from concentrate with no additives and pitched some Lalvin EC 1118 yeast. I kept it in a constant temperature of about 21 degrees centigrade in a dark room for 3 weeks and then took a gravity reading, which was 0.990. I left it for another week and it was still 0.990. So it was finished, and with a starting gravity of 1.090, it's finished up at about 13%. Perfect. But it's cloudy. Very cloudy. But does it matter? I added apples to the other fruit, which can give a thick haze. But what is that haze, and is it a problem? People get very concerned and quite disappointed when their homebrew turns out to be cloudy. The cloudiness is often called a pectic haze. It can also be yeast and other particles that are still in suspension and haven't dropped to the bottom. The wine could clear just by letting it sit undisturbed for a few weeks in a demijohn and airlock. Some brewers will add something called pectolase, which is a pectic enzyme, just before the start of fermentation to help break down the pectin and get a more clear end result. I'm not too concerned about a cloudy wine as long as I'm happy with the taste. And I always let a finished wine sit for a few weeks, which often will clear a cloudy wine anyway. Also, I like the taste of cloudy cider and never worry that it's not clear, and I would never expect a full-bodied Cabernet Sauvignon to be clear. But some people think adding pectolase will not only result in a clear wine, but will also bring out certain flavours and colours. I do feel, however, a rosé wine, for example, tastes and looks better without a pectic haze, so I usually add a teaspoon of pectolase per demijohn at the start of fermentation, especially if I'm going to be sharing the wine with friends. So, how does my cloudy wine taste after about 2 months since the start of fermentation? Well, there's no surprise that it smells like apples, and there are other fruity notes coming from the small amount of cherry and plums. The taste, though, is excellent, with light and crisp apple flavours, yet not as sharp as some strong ciders. This is definitely a nice, delicate, fruity wine, especially when slightly chilled. And after a few big sips, I totally forgot that it was cloudy.